From the moment I could understand my father's words, I knew he'd always longed for a son. Instead, he got me, Jennifer, and my younger sister. Dad was an ophthalmologist, a damn good one too. But he had bigger dreams. When I was about 5, he opened his first eyeglass store. I remember the day clearly, the smell of fresh paint, the gleaming displays, and Dad's proud smile as he cut the ribbon. As the years passed, Dad's business grew. He took out a loan, opened a lens production facility, and before we knew it, he had a chain of stores across the state. By the time I hit high school, Dad's company was a proper empire, 30 stores and a high-tech manufacturing plant. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make Dad proud. While other kids were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was nose-deep in textbooks or helping out at one of Dad's stores after school. Every day after school, I'd head to the store, learning everything I could. How to handle customers, manage inventory, even basic bookkeeping. I was determined to prove myself. My sister, on the other hand, couldn't care less about the family business. She was always off in her own world, paintbrush in hand, creating these wild, colorful masterpieces. Dad tried to get her interested, but it was like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree. Jennifer, my dance teacher, said one day after class, "You've got real talent. Have you ever thought about pursuing dance professionally?" I hesitated. Truth was, I loved dancing. The freedom, the expression, the pure joy of movement. But I pushed the thought away. "Thanks, Miss Davis, but I've got other plans." As high school came to an end, I applied to college for finance and management. Economics and finance didn't come naturally to me like dancing did. But I gritted my teeth and pushed through. Late nights, endless cups of coffee, and more spreadsheets than I care to remember. Meanwhile, my sister breezed through art school, met a guy, and got married right after graduation. To everyone's surprise, her new husband started working for Dad's company. The day I graduated college, I felt a mix of relief and determination. As I walked across that stage, diploma in hand, I could see Dad in the audience, grinning from ear to ear. This was it. I was ready to take on the family business. As I stepped off the bus in my hometown, the familiar sights and smells washed over me. It felt like nothing had changed, but everything was different. I was different. No longer the wide-eyed girl who left for college, but a woman with a degree and a purpose. Dad was waiting for me, leaning against his car with that proud smile I'd always longed to see. "Welcome home, Jen," he said, pulling me into a bear hug. "Ready to get to work?" I nodded, determination stealing my spine. "More than ready, Dad." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Dad started me off in accounting, dealing with primary documentation. It wasn't glamorous, but I threw myself into it with gusto. Every invoice, every receipt, every ledger entry was a step towards proving myself. Years passed, and I climbed the corporate ladder. Deputy Chief Accountant, that was my new title. I was helping Dad with budget planning now, feeling like I was finally making a real difference in the company. My brother-in-law, Tom, was rising through the ranks too. Dad made him head of the supply department, and man, did that guy know how to schmooze. Dad loved him, treated him like the son he never had. I tried not to let it bother me, focusing instead on my own work. But I couldn't help feeling a twinge of jealousy every time I saw them laughing together in Dad's office. Then came the day Dad called me into his office. My heart was pounding as I sat down across from him. "Jennifer," he said, his face serious. "I've been thinking. You've done great work in accounting, and I think it's time for a change." I held my breath, hoping against hope that this was it, the moment I'd been working towards all these years. "I'm making you manager of our retail chain," he said, smiling. "And Tom? He's going to be my deputy at the lens factory." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Manager of the retail chain? It was a step up, sure, but it wasn't what I'd been hoping for. And Tom, he was now second in command at the factory, the heart of our business. "Thanks, Dad," I managed to say, forcing a smile. "I won't let you down." As I left his office, I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard I worked, I'd always be playing second fiddle to Tom. Weeks went by, and I threw myself into my new role. I was determined to prove that I could do more than just crunch numbers. But then, something strange happened. I was reviewing a new shipment of glasses when I noticed some discrepancies in the documents Tom had provided. The numbers didn't add up, and something about the quality felt off. "Hey, Tom," I said, catching him in the hallway. "Can we talk about these documents for the new shipment? Some things aren't quite clear." He barely glanced at the papers. "Everything's fine, Jen. You're probably just overthinking it." His dismissive tone rubbed me the wrong way. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about the integrity of our business. I decided to dig deeper. I went to the head office and requested a quality check on the latest batch of lenses and glasses. Something wasn't right, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing the quality check results, when Dad burst into my office. His face was red, and I could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. "Jennifer," he bellowed. "Who gave you the authority to order quality checks? You're overstepping your bounds, young lady." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. I noticed some inconsistencies in the documents for the new shipment. I was just trying to. "To what?" he interrupted again. "To show everyone how smart you are? To undermine Tom's work?" His words stung. "No, Dad. I was trying to protect our company. If there's something wrong with the products..." "Enough." He slammed his hand on my desk, making me flinch. "You don't have the authority to give instructions to the company or arrange inspections. I'm the head of this company, not you. Do you understand?" With that, he stormed out, leaving me standing there, feeling small and stupid. For days after that, I went through the motions at work. I did my job, nothing more, nothing less. The passion I once had felt like it had been sucked out of me. Then, one evening, Mom called. "Jennifer, honey," she said, her voice excited. "Your father's decided to retire. We want to throw him a party, and I was hoping you could help organize it." I felt a mix of emotions, relief that Dad was stepping down, anxiety about what that meant for the company, and a petty part of me that wanted to refuse just to spite him. But in the end, the part of me that still yearned for his approval won out. "Sure, Mom," I said. "I'd be happy to help." As I planned the party, an idea struck me. Dad had always loved jazz. What if I could get his favorite band to play at the party? It would be expensive, sure, but seeing the look on his face would be worth it. I called Mom to run the idea by her, and she agreed enthusiastically. We decided to split the cost, I, Mom, and Sarah and Tom. I called Sarah next. "Hey, sis," I said. "I've got an idea for Dad's retirement party. What do you think about getting his favorite jazz band to play?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't know, Jen," Sarah said hesitantly. "Sounds expensive. Let me talk to Tom about it." I waited anxiously for her response. Hours turned into days, and finally, Sarah called back. "Sorry, Jen," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Tom says it's too expensive. We can't chip in." In the end, Mom and I split the cost ourselves. It was a stretch for my budget, but I was determined to make this party special for Dad. The night of the party arrived, and the venue was buzzing with excitement. The place looked fantastic, if I do say so myself. Soft jazz played in the background as guests mingled, waiting for the main event. As the evening progressed, the moment I'd been waiting for finally arrived. The lights dimmed, and the first notes of Dad's favorite jazz band filled the air. I held my breath, watching Dad's face. His eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with tears. He stood there, transfixed, as the music washed over him. I've never seen him look so genuinely happy. "I can't believe it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "They're here. They're really here." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. This was the moment I'd been working towards. I opened my mouth to tell Dad it was my idea when Tom suddenly appeared at Dad's side. "Surprise, Dad," Tom said, clapping Dad on the shoulder. "Sarah and I thought you'd like this little treat." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I took a step forward, ready to set the record straight, when I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mom. "Jennifer, honey," she said quietly, her eyes pleading. "Let it go. Don't spoil the moment for your father." I wanted to argue, to shout the truth from the rooftops. But looking at Dad's happy face, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I swallowed hard and nodded, forcing a smile. As the night wound down, Dad took the stage for a speech. I perked up, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd acknowledge my role in organizing everything. "Family," Dad began, his voice thick with emotion. "Family is everything. And tonight, as I prepare to step away from the company I built, I'm filled with gratitude for the support you've all given me." I smiled, waiting for my name to be mentioned. "But more than that," Dad continued, "I'm filled with hope for the future. Hope that this company will continue to thrive for generations to come. And that's why I've made a decision. It's time to pass the torch." I straightened up, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it. All those years of hard work were about to pay off. "Tom," Dad said, turning to my brother-in-law with a proud smile, "I'm making you the new CEO of the company." The room erupted in applause, but I couldn't hear it over the roaring in my ears. Tom? He was giving the company to Tom? "Not only that," Dad continued, oblivious to my shock, "but I'm also entrusting our entire chain of eyewear stores to Tom's capable hands." I felt like I was going to be sick. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. After Dad's announcement, I approached him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, what about me?" He looked at me, his expression a mix of pity and condescension that made my blood boil. "Jennifer, sweetheart," he said, patting my shoulder, "you're a woman. Which means you're a priori stupid and incompetent in management matters. You don't understand anything about running a company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Dad, I've worked so hard. I dedicated my life to this company." He waved his hand dismissively. I know, and that's admirable. But let's face it, you've always been more interested in dancing, haven't you? Now you can pursue that without worrying about the company. Leave the business to those who can actually do it." Without another word, I turned and walked away. I grabbed my coat, ignored my mother's concerned calls, and stormed out of the restaurant. As the cool night air hit my face, I finally let the tears flow. A couple of hours later, I was already packing my bags. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. Away from the family business, away from my father's crushing disappointment, away from Tom's smug face. My phone buzzed. It was my sister, Sarah. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Jen?" Sarah's voice was irritatingly chipper. "Where are you? Dad's looking for you. He wants to know when you're planning to serve the cake. Tom's got a sweet tooth, you know." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, they were worried about cake? "Tell your husband to figure out the cake situation himself," I snapped. "He's the big boss now, isn't he?" I hung up before she could respond. With my bags packed and my resignation letter emailed to HR, I left town. I ended up in a city a few hours away, determined to start fresh. It wasn't easy at first. I landed a junior position at a large auditing firm. The work was challenging, but I threw myself into it with everything I had. No more trying to please anyone but myself. Years passed. I climbed the corporate ladder, earning a reputation as a skilled and dedicated auditor. The firm gave me increasingly difficult and interesting cases, trusting my judgment and expertise. And in the evenings, I danced. I found a studio near my apartment and started taking classes again. It felt like coming home, like rediscovering a part of myself I had buried for far too long. I barely spoke to my family during this time. Occasional calls with Mom, sure, but we kept things superficial. I didn't ask about Dad or the business, and she didn't volunteer any information. Life was good. I had a high-paying job I excelled at, a beautiful apartment in a nice neighborhood, and I was finally pursuing my passion for dance. I felt free, truly happy for the first time in years. Then, one evening, everything changed again. I was walking home from dance class, my body pleasantly sore from a challenging routine, when I saw her. Sarah was standing outside my building, looking lost and disheveled. "Jennifer," she called out, her voice trembling. "I need your help." "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice cold. Sarah looked down, ashamed. "Mom gave me your address." We need your help, Jen. Tom's in trouble. The company, it's being audited by the tax authorities. And your firm is conducting the audit." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, but I let her continue. "We need you to influence the results of the audit," Sarah pleaded. Just tell them everything's fine with the accounting. "Please, Jen. We're family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously asking me to commit fraud? To risk my career, my reputation, everything I built here?" Sarah nodded desperately. "I'll pay you $100,000. Please, Jen. We're desperate." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Tom had screwed up, big time. And now they wanted me to cover for him, to jeopardize everything I'd worked for. "This conversation is over," I said, pulling out my phone. "If you ever suggest something like this again, I'm calling the police." Sarah's face crumpled. She placed a hand on her belly, and I noticed for the first time that she was pregnant. "Please, Jen," she begged. "Think of your niece or nephew. You wouldn't want them to grow up without a father, would you?" I felt a surge of anger. "Your pregnancy doesn't change the fact that your husband is a fraud," I spat. "Now leave, before I call the cops." Sarah's demeanor changed instantly. She started screaming, hurling insults at me, causing a scene right there on the street. Passers-by began to stare, some pulling out their phones. I'd had enough. Without another word, I turned and walked into my building, leaving Sarah screaming on the sidewalk. A month passed after Sarah's unexpected visit. I threw myself into work, trying to forget about the whole ordeal. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. One evening, as I was reviewing some files for a particularly complex audit, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I feared Sarah had returned. But when I opened the door, I was shocked to see my parents standing there. They looked older, more tired than I remembered. Dad, once the picture of confidence, now seemed small and defeated. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. "Jennifer," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we come in? We need to talk." Hesitantly, I let them in. We sat in my living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Finally, Dad spoke. "We've come to ask for your forgiveness," he said, his voice breaking. "We've made terrible mistakes, and we've wronged you deeply." What followed was a confession that left me reeling. Tom, the golden boy, the son my father never had been running a massive scam for years. He'd been buying counterfeit lenses cheaply from South Asia and passing them off as expensive branded products through our chain of stores and pocketing the difference. He'd been siphoning money into offshore accounts for years. As they spoke, a memory surfaced. Years ago, when I'd noticed discrepancies in Tom's reports and tried to investigate. Dad had shut me down, accusing me of overstepping. Now, I realized just how right I'd been. The consequences were devastating. The subpar products were causing allergic reactions in patients. Lawsuits were piling up. The company that my father had built from the ground up, the legacy he'd been so proud of, was now teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. "We were blind," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "We didn't want to see what was right in front of us." Dad reached out, tentatively taking my hand. "Jennifer, we know we have no right to ask this of you. But we need your help." The company needs you. Will you come back and take over? You're the only one who can save it now. I stood there, my parents' plea echoing in my ears. For a moment, I was tempted. The challenge of saving the company, of proving once and for all that I was capable, it was alluring. But then, like a flood, all the memories came rushing back. I remembered the disappointment in my father's eyes when I was born, not the son he'd always wanted. The countless times he'd dismissed my ideas and efforts. The way he'd so easily handed over the reins to Tom, calling me incompetent and stupid. The years I'd spent trying to prove myself, only to be cast aside. And now, here they were, asking me to swoop in and save them. To sacrifice everything I'd built for myself, all for a company that had never truly been mine. I looked at them, really looked at them. Despite the current crisis, they were still well off. They had money, they had resources. This wasn't about survival, it was about pride. My father's pride. His legacy. In that moment, I made my decision. No, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. They both looked shocked, as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. I'm not ready to forgive you, and I don't want to communicate with you anymore. Where was all this concern when you were calling me incompetent? When you were handing over my birthright to Tom? You didn't think about me then, did you? My father tried to interject, but I wasn't finished. And now that you're in trouble, suddenly you remember me? Suddenly I'm capable enough to run the company? No, I won't do it. I won't sacrifice everything I built here to save your pride. My words hung in the air, heavy and final. I saw the hope drain from their faces, replaced by a mix of regret and despair. But it's your legacy too, my father said weakly. I shook my head. No, it's not. You made that very clear when you chose Tom over me. This is your mess. You clean it up. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but I steeled myself against it. I'd spent too many years trying to please them, trying to be what they wanted me to be. No more. I think you should leave now, I said, moving towards the door. They stood slowly, looking lost and defeated. As I watched them walk down the hallway, looking small and pitiful, a part of me ached. But a larger part felt free. For the first time in my life, I had put myself first. Months passed, and life moved on. I heard through the grapevine about the fallout from my family's crisis. Dad had taken the reins of the company once again. It wasn't easy, but slowly, he was rebuilding the reputation he'd spent a lifetime creating. Tom wasn't so lucky. Fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement, the list of charges was long. He ended up behind bars, his offshore accounts frozen, drowning in fines and debt. Sarah, now a single mother, had moved back in with our parents. I heard she was struggling to adjust to her new reality. Sometimes, I felt a pang of sympathy for her and her child, but I reminded myself that she had made her choices. As for me? Well, life had a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. It happened one evening at the dance studio. I was lost in the music, my body moving freely to the rhythm, when I noticed him. A man with a camera, capturing the dancers' movements. There was something about the way he looked at the world through his lens that intrigued me. After class, he approached me. "Hi, I'm Alex," he said, his smile warm and genuine. "I hope you don't mind, but I got some great shots of you dancing. You're really talented." We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Alex was a freelance photographer, with a passion for capturing moments of pure joy and freedom. As we parted ways that night, he hesitated for a moment. "Listen, Jennifer," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime? Or dinner, maybe?" I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. That was the beginning of something beautiful. Alex and I started dating, and with him, I discovered a side of myself I never knew existed. He encouraged me to be more open, more free-spirited. Through his eyes, I saw the world in a new light. Our relationship developed naturally, without pressure or expectations. We enjoyed each other's company, shared our passions, and supported each other's dreams. For the first time in my life, I was with someone who saw me for who I truly was, not for who they wanted me to be. One evening, as we walked hand in hand through the city park, Alex turned to me. "You know, Jen," he said, his eyes twinkling, "you've changed since we first met. You're more, you. More open, more free. It suits you." I thought about his words, about the journey I'd been on. From the dutiful daughter trying to prove herself, to the woman who stood up for herself, to now, someone who was learning to embrace life with open arms. "You're right," I said, returning his smile. "I do feel different. Freer. Happier." As we continued our walk, I reflected on the twists and turns my life had taken. The pain, the disappointments, the hard decisions, they had all led me here, to this moment. I wasn't the person I thought I'd be all those years ago, working in my father's company. I was someone better, someone true to herself. I never thought my life would turn out like this. My name's Rita, and this is my story. I was born to farmers, good people who taught me the value of hard work from the day I could walk. Our days started before dawn, tending to the animals and crops. Life was simple back then. I'd go to school, come home, and help around the farm. Weekends were for family time and catching up on chores. I didn't know any different, and I didn't want to. But things changed when I graduated high school. My parents, bless their hearts, wanted more for me than a life on the farm. "Rita, we've been talking," Dad said one evening as we sat around the dinner table. "Your mom and I think you should go to college." And just like that, my world expanded. I packed my bags and moved to the city, a place so different from everything I'd known that it might as well have been another planet. College was an experience. The classes were interesting enough, but it was the people that really opened my eyes. Kids from all walks of life, with dreams and ambitions I'd never even considered. And then there was Jack. I met him in my second year. He was charming, confident, and so different from the farm boys back home. Jack knew exactly what he wanted from life, or so I thought. "Life's too short to waste it working yourself to the bone," he'd say, lounging on the grass outside the library. "We should enjoy ourselves while we're young." I was smitten. Here was someone who saw life as an adventure, not just an endless series of chores. We started dating, and before I knew it, we were talking about marriage. When I told my parents, they were cautious. They wanted to meet Jack, to get to know the man who'd stolen their daughter's heart. "He seems nice enough," Dad said after Jack's first visit to the farm. "But there's something. I don't know." "Just be careful, Rita." I brushed off his concerns. What did my old-fashioned father know about modern love? Jack was perfect, and we were going to have a perfect life together. My parents, bless them, paid for our wedding and even bought us an apartment in the city. "We want you to have a good start," Mom said, her eyes misty. "Thanks, Mom, Dad," I said, hugging them tight. "I promise I'll make you proud." As Jack and I stood at the altar, exchanging vows and rings, I thought my life was set. I had a husband who loved me, a good job in the city, and a bright future ahead. The first couple of years of our marriage were, well, I thought they were good. Jack and I both had jobs in the city, and we settled into a routine. But looking back, I can see the cracks that were forming even then. "Rita, do we have to go to your parents' farm this weekend?" Jack would whine every time I suggested a visit. "It smells like manure, and your dad always wants me to help with something." I'd sigh and try to reason with him. "They're my family, Jack. And they've done so much for us." "Fine," he'd grumble. "But I'm not shoveling any cow crap." I brushed it off as city boy squeamishness. After all, I'd grown up with those smells and chores. But now I wonder if I should have seen it as a red flag. 2 years into our marriage, I got pregnant. I was over the moon, and my parents were ecstatic. "A grandchild," Mom squealed over the phone. "Oh, Rita, we're so happy for you." Jack's reaction was less enthusiastic. "A kid? Already? I guess that's okay." I chalked it up to nerves. Surely he'd warm up to the idea of being a father. My parents, bless their hearts, continued to support us. They bought us a car, paid for vacations. I was grateful, but Jack seemed to take it all for granted. "Of course they're helping us," he'd say. "That's what parents do." When our son, Tommy, was born, I fell in love all over again. But Jack, well, he tried, I'll give him that. But fatherhood didn't come naturally to him. "Can't you keep that kid quiet?" he'd complain when Tommy cried at night. "Some of us have to work in the morning." I'd bite my tongue and remind myself that we were both adjusting to parenthood. Life went on. We visited the farm when we could, though Jack's reluctance grew with each trip. "Your dad asked me to help fix the tractor again," he'd grouse. "I'm not a mechanic, for Christ's sake." I'd watch my dad and Jack working together, oil-stained and sweaty. Dad would be patient, explaining each step, while Jack would grimace and fumble with the tools. Then, tragedy struck. Within a year, both my parents passed away. I was devastated. "They're gone, Jack," I sobbed into his shoulder. "I can't believe they're gone." He patted my back awkwardly. "It'll be okay. At least they left us the farm." His words jolted me. The farm. My family's legacy. And all Jack could think about was what we'd inherited? In the midst of my grief, Jack dropped a bombshell. "We should sell the farm," he said one night over dinner. "We could buy a big house in the city. Live like kings." I wanted to argue, to fight for my family's legacy. But I was tired, worn down by grief and the demands of motherhood. And wasn't a wife supposed to support her husband's decisions? "Okay," I said quietly. "If you think it's best." And just like that, with a few signatures on some papers, my family's history was sold off to the highest bidder. The money went into our joint account, and Jack was like a kid in a candy store. "We're set for life, Rita," he crowed. "No more slaving away at work. We can do whatever we want." I nodded and smiled, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. This was what Jack wanted, and I was his wife. I had to support him, right? Life after selling the farm was different. The money from the sale cushioned us nicely, I'll give Jack that. We didn't have to work as hard anymore. We both cut back to part-time hours, and for a while, it felt like we were living the dream. But as the years went by, I started noticing things. Jack, who'd never been a hard worker to begin with, seemed to lose all motivation. He'd quit jobs at the drop of a hat, always with some excuse. "That boss was a jerk," he'd say, or "they expected too much." "I'm not a slave, you know." I'd try to reason with him. "Jack, we can't live off the farm money forever. We need to think about our future." He'd wave me off. "Relax, Rita. We're set for life. Why work ourselves to death?" Meanwhile, our son Tommy was growing up fast. He graduated high school, then college, and before I knew it, he was working and living on his own. I was proud of him, but I missed having him around. Then one day, I was flipping through the newspaper when a name caught my eye. It was an article about a successful concrete production plant, owned by none other than Jack's uncle, Robert. "Jack," I called out, "did you see this article about your Uncle Robert?" Jack's face darkened. "I don't want to hear about that old tyrant," he snapped. I knew the story, or at least Jack's version of it. How his parents had died when he was young, leaving him in the care of his uncle. How Robert had been overbearing and controlling, trying to force Jack into the family business. "He never listened to what I wanted," Jack had told me years ago. "It was always about what he thought was best. So I left. Started my own life." Looking at Jack now, lounging in his robe at 2 in the afternoon, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story. Maybe it's time to make peace?" I suggested gently. "It's been years, Jack. People change." Jack's reaction was explosive. Make peace? With that control freak? No way in hell, Rita. Drop it. I let it go, but the incident left me unsettled. There was so much anger there, so much resentment. It made me wonder what else Jack was carrying around, what other parts of himself he was hiding. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I overheard Jack on the phone. His voice was curt, dismissive. I am not interested in his life and it does not concern me, he said sharply before hanging up. My curiosity got the better of me. Who was that, honey? Jack's face was a mask of indifference. Hospital. My uncle's sick. If he kicks the bucket, at least I'll finally get something out of him. I stared at him, shocked. Jack. That's a terrible thing to say. He raised you. Yeah, and made my life hell, he snapped. I'm not going to see him. End of story. As I watched Jack settle back into his armchair, remote in hand, something inside me snapped. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the person I thought I knew. Without a word to Jack, I went to our bedroom and called Tommy. Hey, sweetie, I said when he picked up. How would you feel about meeting your great-uncle? Tommy was surprised, but agreed readily. An hour later, we were walking into the hospital, my heart pounding. The ICU was a maze of beeping machines and hushed voices. And there, in a bed surrounded by monitors, lay Jack's uncle Robert. He looked small and frail, nothing like the tyrannical figure Jack had described. When we introduced ourselves, his eyes filled with tears. Rita, Tommy, he said, his voice weak but warm. Oh, I've wanted to meet you for so long. Over the next hour, Robert told us his side of the story. How he'd taken Jack in after his parents died, raised him as his own. I loved that boy, Robert said, his voice cracking. I wanted him to have everything. To carry on the family business, to have a good life. But Jack, it seemed, had other ideas. He said he didn't want the responsibility, Robert continued. Said he didn't want to work hard like I did, staying up nights worrying about the business. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach as Robert's words painted a picture I recognized all too well. Jack demanded I sell the business, Robert said, shaking his head. Wanted me to set him up with a monthly allowance, an apartment, a car. Said I owed him a carefree life. I glanced at Tommy, seeing my own shock mirrored in his face. I told him that's not how life works, Robert went on. That money needs to be earned. I begged him to stay, to learn the business. But he just got angry. Said he'd find a rich wife and never have to work a day in his life. As I sat there in Uncle Robert's hospital room, memories from the past decade started flooding back. Like pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place, I saw our life together in a new, harsh light. Jack had never held a job for long. He always chose part-time work, called in sick often, took countless days off. I'd attributed it to stress, to him being a free spirit. But now I saw the truth. Life is for pleasure, Rita, he'd always say. Why kill ourselves working? I felt sick to my stomach as realization dawned. Jack hadn't married me for love. He'd married me for my family's money, for the comfortable life he thought I could provide. I was just a means to an end, the rich bride he'd promised his uncle he'd find. Tears welled up in my eyes as the weight of this truth settled on me. Our whole life together, our marriage, our family, it was all built on a lie. Uncle Robert's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice weak. I won't be able to leave anything to you or Tommy. I wanted to, but... It's okay, I said, squeezing his hand. We don't need anything. I had plans, Robert continued, growing agitated. A new project. It would have changed everything. But I ran out of time. Suddenly, Robert's face contorted in pain. The machines around him started beeping urgently. You need to leave, a nurse said, rushing in. Now. A few days later, the call came. Uncle Robert had passed away. When I told Jack, his reaction made my blood run cold. Finally, he exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. Took the old bastard long enough. I stared at him, disgusted. Jack, he was your uncle. He raised you. He waved dismissively. Yeah. So, when's the funeral? Do we need to go to that? In the end, Jack didn't attend. Tommy and I organized the funeral ourselves, a small, dignified affair that I hoped would have made Uncle Robert proud. While I was grieving for a man I'd barely known, my husband was at home, gleefully calculating his newfound wealth. The factory's got to be worth at least $10 million, I heard him saying on the phone when I got home. Can you believe it? I'm rich. I watched him strut around our house, boasting about his inheritance, and felt nothing but revulsion. This wasn't the man I thought I'd married. This was a stranger wearing my husband's face. And then, things got worse. You know, Rita, Jack said one evening, his eyes cold. You're getting kind of old for me. I think I'm ready for an upgrade. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me? He shrugged, not even bothering to look ashamed. You heard me. I'm rich now. I can do better. Over the next few weeks, Jack's behavior became increasingly erratic. He'd stay out late, coming home in the early hours reeking of booze and perfume. More than once, I spotted lipstick stains on his collar. Each time I confronted him, he'd brush me off. Mind your own business, he'd sneer. You should be grateful I come home at all. As I lay awake one night, listening to Jack stumble in at 3 a.m., I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep living like this. I deserved better. But more importantly, I needed to know the truth about everything, about Jack, about the inheritance, about the life I thought we'd built together. One morning, after another night of Jack stumbling in at dawn, I'd had enough. Where were you? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. Jack sneered, his bloodshot eyes narrowing. None of your damn business, Rita. You should be grateful I come back at all. I recoiled as if I'd been slapped. Grateful? Is that what you think our marriage is? He ignored my question, instead fixing me with a calculating look. Say, how much is left from your parents' inheritance? We must have some savings, right? The sudden change of topic threw me off guard. What, Jack, we've spent it all. The accounts are empty. His face twisted into an ugly mask of disgust. Empty? You've got to be kidding me. He paced the room, muttering to himself. Then he turned back to me, his eyes cold. Well, I guess that's it then. I'm done here. Done with you. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Tommy walked in, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Jack's demeanor changed instantly. He plastered on a fake smile and approached our son. Tommy, my boy. Just the person I wanted to see. I need you to sign something for me. He produced a document from his pocket, thrusting it at Tommy. It's just a formality. You're renouncing any claim to Uncle Robert's estate. Since there's no will, it all comes to me anyway. Tommy glanced at me, confusion clear on his face. But after my nod, he took the paper and signed it without hesitation. Jack's grin was triumphant as he snatched back the document. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, he turned back to me, all pretense gone. I want a divorce, he announced, his voice cold and flat. I never loved you, Rita. I just tolerated you for your parents' money. But now I'm rich. I don't need you anymore. The words hit me like physical blows. Even though I'd suspected, hearing it laid out so brutally. I'm moving to Uncle Robert's house, Jack continued, already pulling out a suitcase. Don't try to contact me. It's over. And just like that, he was gone. 30 years of marriage, packed away in a suitcase, and walked out the door. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. It felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Mom? Tommy's voice was soft, concerned. Mom, are you okay? I turned to my son, my rock, and felt the dam break. Tears streamed down my face as Tommy wrapped his arms around me. "It's okay, Mom," he murmured, holding me tight. "We'll get through this. You're strong. You'll be okay." As I clung to my son, sobbing into his shoulder, a small part of me marveled at the man he'd become. Kind, compassionate, everything his father wasn't. And I realized something. "You're the best thing he ever did," I whispered to Tommy. "The only good thing to come out of this marriage." Tommy squeezed me tighter, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened next, I wasn't alone. I had my son, and together, we'd face whatever came our way. The weeks following Jack's departure were a blur of pain and disbelief. I tried to keep my head high, to focus on moving forward, but it wasn't easy. Especially when Jack seemed determined to flaunt his new life in my face. It started with the Facebook posts. Pictures of Uncle Robert's mansion, now Jack's new home, flooded his timeline. I tried to ignore it, to focus on healing, but then the photos changed. A young woman started appearing in them. Blonde, beautiful, barely older than our son. In one photo, Jack had his arm around her, both of them grinning at the camera. The caption made my stomach churn. "Meet my fiancé, Candy. Upgrade complete." The call started almost immediately. Friends, acquaintances, even Tommy's old school teachers. All of them asking questions I didn't want to, answer. "Rita, dear, is everything okay? We saw Jack's posts, what's going on? Are you and Jack really?" I couldn't take it anymore. The humiliation, the constant reminders of Jack's betrayal, it was too much. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Jack and asked to meet, after consulting with a lawyer. The day of the meeting arrived. I waited at our old favorite cafe, divorce papers in hand. Jack swaggered in, Candy on his arm. She couldn't have been more than 25, her face caked with makeup, giggling at something Jack whispered in her ear. Well, Jack sneered, pulling out a chair for Candy. "If it isn't the old ball and chain. Candy, honey, meet Rita. The starter wife." Candy gave me a pitying look that made my blood boil. But I kept my cool. "I have the divorce papers here," I said, sliding them across the table. "I'm not asking for much. Just the house. You can keep everything else." To my surprise, he picked up the pen without argument. "Fine. Have your little house. I've got bigger and better things now." He scrawled his signature across the documents. He turned to Candy, his voice sickeningly sweet. "Now I can finally be with someone I truly love. Someone worthy of me." I gathered the papers, my hands shaking slightly. As I walked out of the cafe, I heard Jack's mocking laughter behind me. But I didn't look back. I had what I came for. The next day, I filed for divorce. As I handed over the papers to the court clerk, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Life has a funny way of serving up justice when you least expect it. For me, it came in the form of a headline splashed across the local newspaper. "Local business tycoon's empire crumbles, nephew left with massive debt." It turned out that Uncle Robert had taken out an enormous loan just before his death, hoping to expand the business. He'd mentioned something about a new project during our hospital visit, but Tommy and I hadn't understood the implications at the time. Now it all made sense. I watched from afar as Jack's new life crumbled around him. He sold the factory, the mansion, the cars, everything. And still, he was left owing nearly $1 million. The cherry on top? His young bride, Candy, packed her bags and left the moment she realized Jack wasn't the wealthy catch she'd thought he was. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with Jack. Then, one rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jack standing there, looking nothing like the smug, wealthy man who'd walked out on me months ago. He was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Rita," he said, his voice cracking. "I've been such a fool. I see that now. Please, can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. For the next hour, I listened as Jack poured out his heart. He told me how he'd lost everything, how he'd realized what truly mattered in life. "I was wrong, Rita," he said, his eyes pleading. "So wrong. But I see now that you were the only one who ever truly cared for me. The only one I've ever really loved." Then, to my utter disbelief, Jack got down on one knee, producing a small velvet box. "Rita, please. Give me another chance. Marry me again. Together, we can overcome anything." For a moment, I was speechless. Then, I did something that surprised even me. I laughed. It started as a small chuckle and grew into full-blown, tears streaming down my face laughter. Jack's face fell. "What's so funny?" When I finally caught my breath, I looked him straight in the eye. "Oh, Jack. Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could treat me like garbage, throw me away, and then come crawling back when things got tough?" His expression darkened. "Now listen here," he snarled, jumping to his feet. "This is my house too. I have rights." I calmly walked to the drawer where I kept our divorce papers, pulling them out and showing him his own signature. "No, Jack. You don't. You signed away any claim to this house. It's mine. Now get out, or I'll call the cops." For a moment, I thought he might try to argue further. But something in my expression must have told him I meant business. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, I called Tommy and told him everything. My wonderful son was supportive as always. "You did the right thing, Mom," he said. "I'm proud of you." Those words meant more to me than he could ever know. In the weeks that followed, I made some big decisions. The house, with all its memories both good and bad, felt too big for just me. So I sold it, using the money to buy a cozy apartment in a vibrant neighborhood I'd always loved. At 60, I'm finding that life is just beginning. I've started traveling, seeing all the places Jack always promised we'd visit but never did. I've taken up painting, joined a book club, even tried my hand at salsa dancing. Every now and then, I catch a glimpse of Jack around town. He looks older now, worn down by his mistakes and misfortunes. Life didn't turn out the way I expected. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Because now, for the first time in a long time, I'm truly, completely, happily me.